Check 1 2. We are live in the Joebeau podcast. This is episode 2. For everybody listening, this is my second podcast. We have a guest today. He's not very special. He thinks he's special. He's got a big head on his shoulders. He ain't very special, but he's my brother. He's my twin. His name's Connor Bober. Connor, how you doing today?
Pretty good. When was your first podcast? You never told me about it.
It was yesterday, or I guess last night. I decided to whip together a podcast. In my room, decided go to Best Buy, buy a couple mics, as I talked in the other podcast. But today, we got a few things we're gonna talk about. Mainly what we've been talking about lately has been hunting. This is usually the time of year that we start preparing to go hunting. So we have to find land to hunt. Use one big thing that we've been using this year that we haven't been is topography. So we've been finding land, using topo maps to kind of figure out where these deer are going and how they're going. And if you don't like deer hunting, I encourage you to still listen, just because you could develop an interest in it just by hearing us talk and chat. And if you do like deer hunting, then this is a good one. That's not going to be the only thing we talk about in this podcast, so don't get me wrong here. But we're going to start by probably chatting about hunting. So right now we are currently in I guess what we'd call a study room, with a TV, in one of the school buildings that we go to. We have pulled up this app called Onyx Maps. If you've never heard of this app and you are a hunter, or even, I guess it can apply to hikers too.
Anybody who wants to go out and go explore some land, definitely need to check out this. Another good one is called Cal Topo, and Google Earth, of course, is the obvious one. If you can funnel between those three, kind of just go back and forth between those three, you can definitely get a good feel of any type of terrain or any land you want to go check out or something. You get a really good feel just by checking out all three of those. So definitely try those ones.
To pretty much give you guys kind of a description of at least Onyx Maps and Cal Topo. Onyx Maps, if you're a hunter, I would say it's a must have if you're a hunter. Would you agree?
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely a necessity, especially if you're hunting, any big woods. I mean, I'm talking big woods like 100 acres or greater. You definitely need to be checking it out. You can be able to find, the ravines, the saddles, high points, marshes, swamps, rivers, creeks, ditches. You'll be able to find just the little intricate things that could really expand your hunting, like where you go hunting. Maybe you can try a new passage area because you didn't know you can get in that way, through a creek or a ditch, or maybe you haven't checked out part of this mountain because you didn't think it was something that you thought it was, and then you look on the topography map and you find it's a big old swamp or something. Like the bottom part of the mountain is a big old swamp or something. Definitely need to try it out. They offer like a subscription based thing. It's a year subscription. It's like $30. Definitely need to try it out.
For the people who don't know what we're talking about, I'll kind of give you a brief description of at least what we're looking at right now. So Connor and I used to live in Vermont, still partly live there, partly live in Florida, partly live in Vermont. So right now we have pulled up a map on Onyx Maps of Vermont where we hunt. And so what Onyx Maps will do is it'll give you they're called layers, and we have all the layers clicked on. You have the private land layers, the private land, the public land, the wildlife management units, and the big game reporting stations. 4 layers. This comes with the basic 1-year subscription. And so pretty much what it does, if we zoomed in on, say, like a town, it'll have a bunch of orange lines, usually in squares, and those squares will be people's property, and usually it'll have the name of who owns that property. Very, very, very useful. especially if you're trying to ask permission to hunt on private lands, or you want to know where the state land maybe borders private land, like where the boundaries are. It's a very useful um, app and or website to use. I think I found it last year. I was listening or watching a video of the Hushin crew on YouTube, and they were talking about this. They hunt in the western part of the country, so they hunt more muleys and elk and all that. So they need it just as much as we do over here in the northeastern part, or even the eastern part of the country. So it's a really cool app. But I guess we're gonna talk about a little bit about. Actually, what do you want to talk about, Con? We're gonna talk about some of our hunting tactics and kind of what we do. If you guys don't know, we're not just random kids that don't know how to hunt. Combined within the last 10 years, we've killed how many deer? Just us two, minus Dad.
I don't know, quite a few.
Probably 15 to. Probably like 15 or 20.
Yeah, Vermont, that's good numbers.
Yeah, a lot of people listening are like, oh, wow, it's only, a few deer for 10 years. Well, people in Vermont know that shooting a deer every year is definitely not something that you take for granted. Me personally, I've shot one deer per year and then plus one. So I've been hunting for, I think, 10 or 11 years?
Mm-hmm.
10, I think it was 10 years, right? I think 10. Yeah, because I'm 20. I started when I was about 10. Or maybe it's been only 9. I don't know when I think I shot my first deer when I was at the age of 10. I'd have to look back in the books. But I shot my first deer when I was 10, and ever since then I've shot. I think I've only gone 1 year going skunked, and that was like this 2 years after I started hunting. So it wasn't like I could control it necessarily. Usually it would have been like, because at that time in my life I was like 13 maybe, and that's just, I wasn't huge into hunting, so I didn't know. I didn't really put myself in great situations. It was more or less my dad. I'm not gonna blame my dad for it, but I'm just saying. Ever since we've been able to scout, Connor and I, so pretty much since we've been about 16, I'd say, when we first got our license and I got a vehicle, that's when the real hunting started, and that's when we really got into it. We were able to ask permission, and I would say in the last, let's see, we're 20, so in the last 4 years, I think I've killed 3 of the 4. I've killed 2 deer per year. In 1 year, I killed just 1 deer, and Connor's killed a few in these last 4 years especially. So, and especially in Vermont, it's like I said, maybe you go out west, Midwest, and it's like, oh, I can easily get a deer per year. Well, in Vermont, any good Vermont hunter is going to know, or anybody that hunts in Vermont their whole life is going to know that it's tough. It's tough to shoot a deer per year, and it's also tough to shoot especially a buck per year. And within the last 4 years, I've killed 3 bucks, and they've been solid bucks. They're pretty mature bucks. My biggest buck to date is a 7-point, 183 pounds with my rifle. That was probably 6 years ago. So we know what we don't know everything, but we do know enough to at least put ourselves in good situations to kill deer every year, especially every year. And we like to say, between the 3 of us, my brother, Connor, obviously, myself, and my dad, we like to at least get 2 deer down every year. And I think we've achieved that. Other than last year I got a mature buck with my rifle. But last year was a little funk, because what happened was, me and Connor moved down to Florida, so we were down in school down here, so we could only take off a 1 week of school. So we decided to take the first week of rifle off, and then the second week was Thanksgiving. So we had 2 weeks of rifle hunting, and that's it. We had no prior scouting, we had no bow season, we had no muzzleloader season, just nothing. We were going straight off the cuff, just trying new land that we never even knew about, and we ended up putting ourselves. I saw, I think, 2 or 3 bucks during that season. Connor saw a couple bucks, and then I ended up shooting one with my dad. And that video is on YouTube, on my YouTube channel. It's just called Joebeau, Joebeau. So I think that proves it in and of itself how with no scouting, just put us in a position where we found this new spot. I'm not gonna give names of roads or anything because a few of these people probably already hunt in Vermont that we're talking about. But we found this one spot we didn't even know. We waited till it snowed, pretty much, right? Drove down that road, saw, and this is one thing too that's a very good useful tip. If you know that there's land that's not posted, especially, you drive up and down the roads when it snows, because the snow is one of the best things that happens during hunting season. It'll tell you where and when the deer are coming through. So I think I was hunting in this one other spot, and Connor, how about you talk about what you and Dad kind of did and how you found this new spot? How about?
So basically, we dropped Joseph off at this golf course. I think it was one evening, and I didn't really have a set spot. Some guy, because we hunt public land, so some guy kind of went in to my entry point. So I kind of knew where that guy was heading, and he was kind of close to my stand. So I got my father on the phone, and we ended up checking out a different road. We knew, my father knew prior because he's been hunting Vermont his entire life. So he kind of gets a good understanding of where he used to see deer, and kind of knows it over time, where the deer population might, increase and where it might decrease. And he knew that this place could have potentially increased because he's been seeing a lot of deer when he's working, and he can see all the deer in the fields because he's got to get up, wicked early, probably like 5 during the springtime. 5. During the springtime, 4 or 5. That means in and of itself, he's driving around these roads when the sun is rising. So he's able to see where these deer are feeding in the morning. Anywho, we found this road, or he already knew of the road, and we were going down it, and it was a fresh layer of snow too. I think it snowed maybe 2 days before, so it was relatively fresh.
About 3 inches of snow.
Yeah, about 3 inches. Yeah. And we were driving down this road, actually to get to a different spot to park the car and go walk in the woods. But on our way down this road, we stumbled upon a nice tiny field right in front of this guy's house. I'm talking, this thing couldn't even have been a half acre, and it was just scraped up. The deer were getting there, trying to paw the field, trying to run the snow, or run their hooves down to the dirt, trying to get some grass. And I kind of looked around, looked at the different tracks, bunch of doe tracks, but I knew it was early enough in the season where not all the bucks could have been rutting. So I knew potentially if there's does, there's still some bucks lurking around those does. They weren't, they're still trying to find their way, trying to find a mate, I guess. So, anywho, we saw the tracks. I got out. I realized it wasn't posted. So one side of the road was posted, the other side wasn't. Walked up in the woods, 20. I think it's probably about 50 yards in the woods, far enough away from any houses. I found this apple tree, and sure enough, there's scrapes, and there's even a doe peed out some estrus there. So I knew that was going to be a really good stand. Kind of picked a spot where I knew I was able to get in there with any kind of wind direction. I was hunting a an east wind, a northeast, any type of east wind, northeast, southeast, and east would have worked in that stand location, and kind of sat there a couple nights. I did see a buck there early in the morning, but I couldn't quite figure out what buck it was, so I wasn't very confident in shooting it. But basically the way you find them is you just gotta. I mean, in that case, we kind of got lucky in the fact that we saw these deer tracks in the snow. But that just kind of proves the point where snow will help out like any hunter. Really, they'll help out any hunter. And then that exact road, Joseph actually shot his deer, and he can kind of explain how he was able to get in that chunk of woods there, pretty big, couple 100 acres of woods with our father, and was able to shoot that deer right in the morning. I think it was 9 o'clock in the morning.
So yeah, that's how we kind of found that spot. You might have heard some mouse clicking. I'm bringing up the spot where I shot my deer, and I wanna get into that for those people who are interested in hunting. I'm gonna kind of give you kind of tell you about this particular day, kind of what happened, and whatnot. So I believe this was the second week. This was Thanksgiving week, I believe, of rifle. Am I right, Connor?
It was the beginning of Thanksgiving, so it was.
I think it was a Saturday, the second Saturday, right?
Yeah, so Saturday before Thanksgiving.
Yeah. So it was the second Saturday of the season, and our experience, however, our experience in Vermont tells us that the first week of rifle, if you don't get one by then, it's gonna be real freaking hard to get one the second week, because especially when you're hunting more urban areas, because all the deer get shot pretty much, and then the big ones are very smart, so it's hard to get the big ones, especially after being pressured. So if we don't usually get one on the first, it's the first week, then we still hunt hard and everything. We hunt as hard as we can and as much as we can. But you get kind of more impatient, kind of, so to speak.
Yeah, we know that in Vermont, the bucks tend to go in rut. The last week, they're pre-rut last week of bow. That's kind of, I guess, around the map. Midwest, everybody knows that these bucks get in pre-rut probably about the last week and a half of bow season. I don't know how it is in other states, but after the week and a half of bow season, there's actually a week in there that is considered the rut week, but that entire week we don't have a season, and then at the end of that week, upcoming that weekend, is actually youth weekend. And in our youth weekend, anybody could, any young hunter can take anything, which is great for the sport and the hobby. But the problem is during that first week in November, that you get off, that's when the bucks kind of are starting to get into rut. So when we're hunting, we're really hunting the second week of November, and that second week of November is typically in the Midwest and up in New York and Pennsylvania, the Carolinas. Typically that second week is actually the almost the ending of the rut, because they're able to hunt that first week in November, where we have to start our hunting season in the second week of November. So it's kind of tough. It's kind of tough to understand, but that's why he's saying at the end of that first week that we get to hunt. So the second week of November, if you haven't gotten one, it's tough to still find a buck after that, because all the bucks don't go in rut in the same day, or maybe even the same week, but that's like towards the end of the week. Or end of the rut rather, and it's really tough to find a nice mature buck still able to do that.
So yeah, you covered that pretty well. But let me get into this story kinda for you fellow deer hunters. And this buck was actually very mature. Half of his rack was broken off. He was missing teeth. You could tell he was just a big mature buck. So what happened was, we dropped Connor off down the road where him and my dad found those deer tracks the couple days prior. However, when they found them, it snowed. The snow then melted, which meant we didn't have snow to go hunting, because when it snows, I really want to go and I really want to track, and a lot of people want to do that. But then that was my plan. I was going to track on this big mountain near Connor, but it didn't. The snow melted, so we weren't able to do that. So instead, we decided, well, it's gonna rain, the snow's gonna melt, it's gonna be wet. Let's go and do some still hunting, and we'll still hunt this 3-mile stretch to Connor all morning, and then by the time we get to Connor, it'll be mid-afternoon, and we'll figure out another game plan if we haven't seen any deer. Well, what we have pulled up here is where we go in. So we drop Connor roughly as the crow flies 3 miles north, okay? And we come in where it's already public area, so there's a lot of hunters here already. So we drop him off, and we get over here, and I think we were the first ones. No, we were the second or third ones in the woods. I think there was 2 cars parked there before us, because we got in late. We wanted to get in right as we wanted to get to where because we had to walk like a 2-mile stretch before we even hit woods. We had to walk like 2 miles on a trail before we even hit good woods. So what happened was we got in late purposely so we can, by the time we get to the spot, it's going to be cracking daylight. And we decided I think we looked at topography maps actually a few nights before to see where the heck we can even get in and where we want to go. Well, what we found was, and we know that the first half of this mountain is swamp. So it's like you're not walking in on a swamp, but there's this big swamp that's probably 1.5 miles by a half a mile. It's a big swamp, and it kind of meets hardwoods, and then it goes to this bottom of this mountain, and then it goes pretty much straight uphill to a mountain. So it's like a big swamp that meets a mountain, and then it goes like 800 feet elevation up to the top of the mountain. Well, we decided these hunters probably don't want to get into the swamp. A lot of people don't like getting into that swamp, and this is like a cedar swamp, so it's got a lot of small cedar trees. It's still wet. There's still a lot of moisture, but it's these small cedar trees. So we figured those guys are going to go up toward the mountain where everybody else does because it's dry land, and a lot of people like hunting those big knobs. Well, we go, okay, we'll follow this trail for 2 miles, and we'll break off, and we'll cut into the swamp. So that's what we did, my dad and I. We go down, we walk down this thing, and at the end of this long trail, there's a pond. So you get around the pond, and once you get around the pond, that you can either take a left and keep going up the trail, or you can go straight or take a right and go off trail into the swamp. We figured nobody's going to take a right, or most people aren't going to take a right. Most normal people aren't going to take a right and go to the swamp because nobody wants to walk through a swamp. But what we did was we were like, all right, let's go through the swamp. Let's get in there. So we did. And the thing that's very important about this swamp is that it's got 3 or 4 knobs. We call them knobs. What are they really?
Like tiny hills.
Like hills or high spots, kind of. So what we found was that these swamps have these like little hills within the swamp, and we know from experience, bucks love those hills. And if you're listening, bucks love those hills. Okay, they like those hills because they are secluded within a swamp, and naturally, coyotes are not going to go through, chest-high water to get to a deer. They're just not. It's impossible for a small dog to do that. It's not impossible for a 200-pound deer to do that, okay? So we knew this is the spot, okay? So we get in there, and we're still hunting, and it's starting. It's a beautiful morning. Wind, I think the wind was in our face, and we're just still hunting. Me and my dad slowly.
It was raining.
Yeah, it started raining a little bit. About 20 minutes in, it started raining, and then that rain turned into snow. Beautiful morning to track, or not even to track, but to still hunt. You have the wind, you have the snow, and you have the wet ground. So you're quiet, your scents are getting blown everywhere, so the deer can't tell where you are. And then so we get in there, and we start still hunting. We get up one knob, see a lot of deer sign, get down into the swamp, and we're starting to walk in the swamp, and we found this one little high point. So we take the point of this knob. We take the point, and we start slowly walking up. I was in front, and as soon as we crept the top of the hill, we saw a deer trotting along the top. So I raised my gun. I couldn't tell what it was. It was dark because this is a swamp. It's morning. It's pretty dark in these swamps in the morning. Couldn't tell what it was. It runs down the swamp, or not down the swamp. It runs the top of this knob and keeps going more north. So it kind of runs out of sight. Well, my dad said he'll stay put. So because 2 people is obviously louder than 1, he said, I'll stay put. You creep up there, see if you can get a shot at it. Well, I get creeping up about halfway up this little hill. It's not very big. It's probably maybe 100 yards by 70 yards, and it's just a cedar knob pretty much in the swamp. Well, I get to about halfway up this little knob where I can peek my head up and see the length of the knob, and I see 2 deer coming at me. Pick up my gun, scope it. First one was a doe, second one was a buck. The doe, and the thing that was astonishing about this was this buck was in so much rut. It was in rut so heavy, it didn't pick its head up for 1 second. It was right on this doe's butt, pretty much. Back legs, sniffing estrus. He was in rut full bore. So the doe runs past, the buck comes up, he gets into a shooting lane that was just a natural shooting lane. It's not like I previously came in or anything. Just a natural shooting lane. Came in, and while he was slowly trotting, I just shot him, and he flopped her down on the ground, and we ended up getting that deer. And it took us all day pretty much to get that deer out. That's how far back in the swamp we were. We were probably, the way we had to walk, we were probably, I would say, close to 2 miles back. Wouldn't you? Probably at least 2 miles, 2 or 3 miles.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably true. You guys picked me up before we started dragging anything out.
Yeah, what happened was we shot the deer, and we're like, at the time, we're like, damn, this is going to be a hell of a drag. Connor's, by the time the deer was shot and we got it all gutted, it was probably about 10 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. And we're like, and we didn't have any cell reception. So we're like, okay, well, Connor's probably sitting there with his thumb up his butt, not knowing where we are. So we go, okay, well, since I'm obviously in more shape than my dad, I said, all right, well, I'll walk back to the car and drive down the road. We didn't have cell reception, so it was just, I guess, instinct, where I by chance met Connor as soon as he was at the top of the hill. It was because after that you were gonna go walking back into the woods, and we would have never got you for probably the rest of the day. You were just going to say, well, these guys didn't come pick me up, I'm going to keep hunting. It was just at that point, like, that was just a luck of the draw that at the second that I was driving by, he was at the top of the hill. Considering we were supposed to pick you up an hour before, so you had no idea we were even coming. So that's pretty much what happened. Pick Connor up. At this point, it's snowing heavy. It's like that wet snow that gets your clothes all soaked. Yeah. This wet snow. Excuse me. And we get Connor back, and we get the deer, and we start dragging out, and it was a great memory. That was the first time I ever shot a deer with somebody, like still hunting with somebody. So that proves that 2 people can easily still hunt. Even 3 people, if you really wanted to, could easily still hunt and still get the job done. It's just about how quiet you want to be and how slow. And when you're still hunting, it's got to be wicked slow. You have to take your time. You're not in any rush. The deer, if they're bedded, aren't in any rush. So that's pretty much how that hunt went, and that's how we firmly proved that using topography works. That was one of our best indications that implicate that our research did the job. And so we said, well, shit, if we can get in the woods for 2 weeks of the year with no prior scouting, our dad didn't scout or anything, then what can we do? How many deer can we shoot if we put 3 or 4 months before the season in and really scout? And so we decided this year, even though we live in Florida, Connor's going to be moving up to Vermont in a month or two, and I'm going to be moving to New York City in a month or two. So we'll be home. Not home. Well, he'll be home, but I'll be close to home. So depending on my work schedule, I'm hoping I can get out a lot more this year than I did last year to hunt. So these last few days we've been really scouting, looking at land that we can at least get on for now, and picking apart those lands that we know we can hunt. And then when Connor goes up, he's obviously going to ask permission because private land's also a lot better than public land. You have a lot less hunters usually. So that's how we're going. And we found this one spot. Um, you want to bring up that map real quick? Just down the road across the mountain, um, to that spot we found the other day. Yeah. So this spot in particular is probably gonna be my number one choice to hunt. And I haven't even asked anybody for permission where I know that there's deer. But I remember last year, another time. I think this was just before I shot my deer or whatever. My dad, myself, and my grandfather found this another piece of land that isn't posted. So you in Vermont, and I think everywhere, I think you hunt where it's not posted. Anyway, we found this one spot where there's miles of corn meadows. Probably, I think. Do a distance check right there, from where you park to where you can get to the woods. No, like at the. I think you have to use that one. The distance. There's a few people being a little noisy, but it's all right. So to where you can even get to is almost a mile. It's point seven. Was that 3/4 of a mile? 3/4 of a mile to even get to the edge of the woods to then get into the woods. So it's a hike, and that's why I like it, because those spots are the spots where only a fit person who really knows what they're doing is going to really want to get in there. So the spot in particular, to give you a kind of rough estimate, is it's almost like a V. So think of two roads that form an upside down V, pretty much. And then between the two roads is probably 2 miles, probably 2 or 3 miles. And there's woods in between, but on one road it's just woods, and on the other road it's cornfields and then woods. Well, we came in from the cornfields and then woods side, and this is similar to where we were hunting before. It's about 1/4 of a mile, or at least, there's a swamp that's 1.5 miles long and probably a 1/2 mile wide that then butts up to I would say that's a mountain, or at least that's probably a mountain or a small mountain, big hill. And we like these these swamps mainly because they're pretty secluded, and like I said, if there's going to be a few people maybe that ever get to the spot throughout the years, or throughout a year or two. So we found this one swamp, and we knew we used to hunt the other side of the road. That was 2 miles to the west of this spot. We used to hunt it, and we know that there's deer on that road. So we figured, okay, well, there's probably deer down here. And the reason why I like this spot so much is because not only does it take a while to get back there, but once you use this this Onyx map app, it shows the topography. And one thing that we didn't know, just by scouting, by going there last year, we never found this place. There's how long do you think that is? Can you get a no that little knob in the middle of the swamp? Just by looking at this topography map, we were able to find that. Let's see. We're able to find this this one little hill, and it's about a 20 acre. If you drew a square around it, it's about 20 acres. And this swamp's big, so it's just a small part of the swamp. But let me kind of draw this for you. So think of one straight road. To the left of the road, there's a mile of corn meadows. To the edge of the corn meadows, then it then hits swamp, and then it goes 1/2 mile of a swamp, and then to the left of that, it goes up to a knob. So to get to this hill is probably about a mile away too. But these little knobs and these swamps are where these bucks are going to be bedded. They're going to be on these knobs, bedded with those. A, because it's close to food source, and B, because it's secluded. Nobody's going to get there, or not, at least not a lot of people. There's going to be a lot less chance
of any predator getting in.
Right, yeah, chance of any predator coming in. So we decided this is going to be one of our top 3 places we're going to scout. Right after, I say, the spot that I shot my deer at last year. We only had a week to scout it, this year we want to get more in. We want to see where there's more bucks, I guess. But we could probably transfer topics, I'd say, to I don't know. What do you want to talk about? Um, I know a few people want to know what it's like to be a twin, and we don't really get into this that much because it's pretty much similar to being a sibling to anybody that has a sibling. It's the same damn thing as that, except this person is so happens to have the same DNA and looks just like you, and is also the exact same. Well, not exact, but same age as you. So pretty much, we obviously are twins, and we just do a lot of the same stuff together, which is beneficial because we get to experience a bunch of cool stuff with each other that a lot of people who don't even have siblings can't experience. It's kind of like a friend thing. It's kind of like finding the same friend or finding a friend that's in the same grade as you, even if you have older siblings. It's kind of like that, and somebody with the same interests. So we like hunting, we like fishing, we like business, we like everything the same. We have very similar majors. His is marketing, mine's entrepreneurship. We have very similar interests. So naturally, we find common ground, I guess, and we find things that we're interested in. We work together to get it done. And that's one thing that I encourage people to do is if you are a lone hunter, find like a friend or something, or find a sibling like an uncle or a cousin or something to go hunting with you, because it's a lot better to have somebody with you when you're hunting than to not have somebody with you, because a lot of people would get bored if it's just themselves. But having my brother and a few grandfathers to hunt with, it changes the experience completely. And I'm talking complete, because I've hunted by myself. There's a hunting season, not last year but the year before, where I was in college by myself, and I hunted down near my college a lot by myself. I didn't have a friend or anything, and that's fun. It's fun, but it's not as fun as bringing people with you and having a fun time, I guess. But we got into hunting. For those who are interested in hunting, I kind of briefly talked about being a twin. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about? What's been on your plate?
Thinking about doing some fishing tournaments and in Vermont, and I guess we can relate almost. You can relate hunting. It's very similar to fishing in some aspects. In other aspects, it's very different. But fishing is kind of like hunting. You can use topography. You could use aerial maps to better understand the times of year that you are fishing. If you can use these hunting tactics, you can pretty much be successful in almost anything you either hunt, catch, anything recreational that you like to do. That's not that bad. Another thing is Joe does have a YouTube channel. He does a couple different things. Down here in Florida, it's like largemouth heaven. We live about 30 minutes away from Lake Okeechobee, and we do a lot of pond hopping, seeing as that we don't really have a boat. We do have a boat in Vermont, but not down in Florida, so we just do a lot of pond hopping, going fishing. It's the same thing. You just got to try to understand the fish in your area, understand what the habitat's like, what's the natural prey there, and kind of make your routes and do what you got to do. Study them, and then you can catch some pretty big fish doing it as well. But it is closing in on 4:30. We've been talking for a pretty good chunk of time here. Let us know what you guys want us to talk about. Anything in particular would work, I guess. I don't have anything that we can't talk about. Fashion, I guess. Business, outdoor stuff. outdoor stuff's pretty good for us, but we also like to talk about business, social media marketing. We kind of do a lot of that. Maybe talk about the changing of states, because when we decided to come down to Florida, man, it was like 2 month time. We said, you know what, let's just go to Florida. Then literally 2 months later, moved to Florida. Pretty quick transition there. It's a little bit rough on the mind, but if you're mentally strong, you pretty much get through it. It's a little hard being away from a lot of family. We do have a couple of family members down here, but they're not as good as the ones back home. So I mean, we could talk about a lot of topics. Just let us know. We're gonna try to get a YouTube channel going. Kind of discuss what we like to do, and hopefully if we can get one going for this upcoming hunting season, we'll go through a lot of different things and how we find success throughout the woods. And like I said, if you have any other discussions that you want us to talk about, any topics, just let us know. But I'm gonna hand the mic over to Joe. He's gonna say a couple things about his channel, and then you guys have a good evening, and God bless.
Thanks for that, Con. So yeah, I do a YouTube channel. Obviously, I've said that a few times on my podcast. A few times as if I've had the podcast long. I said that on my earlier podcast, and I'm saying it now. I have a YouTube channel. It's just Joebeau, Joebeau. If you haven't already, subscribe to this YouTube channel or SoundCloud, or if this makes it on iTunes. Favorite these. Let me know kind of what you guys want to talk about, like Connor was saying. We talk about a bunch of stuff. Maybe later this week we'll get into conspiracy theories or something, because I got a few opinions on conspiracy theories. So we'll talk about politics. We don't know what we're going to talk about, and I can't give you guys a schedule. And I think that's the awesome part about this podcast is it's right off the cuff. I didn't write any notes about this. I didn't do anything. I said, Colin, here's a mic. Let's start talking and chit-chatting, because we figured we do it every day anyway. So we might as well try it. Well, we covered a lot, especially about hunting. If you don't like hunting, let me know below. Say, I don't like to listen to you guys chat about hunting, because I'll take that. And obviously, everybody's entitled to their own opinion. But if a lot of people are saying, I don't want to talk about hunting, talk about fishing, or if people want us to talk about, like Connor said, what it's like to travel 1,300 miles away from Vermont when you've never been anywhere outside of the country, we could certainly talk about that. We got a bunch of stuff we could talk about. We could just sit down and list off a bunch of funny stories, like the time we went off the road deer hunting, or there's a few ones out there that we could probably chat about. There's also a few that we probably shouldn't chat about on the internet. But I hope everybody's having a wonderful day, whether you're going to work, whether you're hanging out with your family, whether you're laying in bed at night like I do, listening to a podcast. I hope you guys have a wonderful night. And I'll see you later for the third podcast. Have a great one, guys.